Eddie Brock and Carnage have reached the end of the road. Kinda. Because now that Muse is caught up with them, this sets up some really interesting changes going forward. So with that said, if you're enjoying these videos, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. Alright, so coming back, this continues from what we saw in issue 9, when Eddie and Carnage made their way to the Green Phoenix Wellness Retreat. Because after bonding with Carnage, for a while Eddie had been seeing memories from his time as King in Black in bits and pieces, where one of those memories included a woman who we now know as Molina, who at one point had a green symbiote, and as it turns out, Molina had basically thrown her life away after bonding with this symbiote. She walked out on her husband, her kids, it was crazy. But because her symbiote had cared for her so deeply, it gave Molina the recipe to a serum that would not only end their bond, but it would also make her body unpalatable to any other symbiote. And little did she know at the time, this would also kill her symbiote. So when Eddie showed up at her door, she of course shot him, chained him up, and dragged him downstairs, which is standard practice for a health and wellness retreat. But like we saw, this led to her locking him in a symbiote kill box just moments before injecting Eddie with the symbiote killing serum, weakening Carnage to the point where Carnage is hanging on for dear life. And at this time, this is where they got the knock on the door, and we saw that Muse tracked Eddie all the way here. Because as we know, Muse has a bone to pick with Eddie Brock for burning down his studio. And now with Muse showing up at the front door, he's polite, and he asked, "Might I speak with Eddie Brock?" And that's where Molina's like, "If you're looking for Eddie Brock, I'm sorry, he's not a patient here." And that's where Muse is like, "Well, that was carefully worded," as he steps forward and lets himself in. So he tells her here, "If we're pretending to be courteous, I'm sure you won't mind if I have a look around. My name is Muse, by the way. Don't forget it. You'll want to remember it when you tell the story." And as he looks down at the blood stain on the floor where she dragged Eddie downstairs, Muse is just like, "You have a lovely home." Only for Molina to put a gun to his head and tell him it'll be a lot lovelier with you gone. And she goes on to tell him either leave or she'll call the cops. Or if he wants to stay, she'll still call the cops. But then she'll have to explain why there's a dead weirdo in the front hall. And Muse is just like, you know, I don't think you will. As he kneels down to inspect the blood, and he tells her, "I don't think you want the attention." And now because Muse can reconstruct an insane amount of detail by way of using his senses, he knows right away that this is Eddie Brock's blood. So Molina gives him one last warning to get the hell out of her house. And Muse just tells her, "No." Like, what? Well, wait a minute. And he just pulls the rug up from underneath her feet, and she takes a nasty fall. But once again, with Muse being such a polite person, he tells her, "I'm sorry this story didn't end the way you hoped," just before showing her the bottom of his boot. Because at this point, they're no longer pretending to be courteous. And after this, we head over to Eddie and Carnage, who are just downstairs in the symbiote kill box. And just like before, Carnage is begging for Eddie's help. Because he's like, "Eddie, please, this isn't how this should end. There's no love lost between us. But with all our history, don't you think our story deserves a better ending than some random woman poisoning me in the basement? We are cosmic nobility. You and I. Surely you..." And Eddie stops him right there. He's like, "Carnage, I say this with all the sincerity I can muster." Shut up. Because Eddie doesn't even have the energy to do this right now. But he's gonna need to find it because Muse is here. But when Muse walks downstairs and he sees Eddie already in this glass kill box, chained up, as if Molina prepared Eddie as a gift or something, for Muse to take it from here and just do whatever he wants to Eddie. You know, as far as like torturing or killing him or whatever. But seeing this as Muse, like, man, had I known she'd done all this, I might not have killed her. And now Eddie knows this is Muse. But right here, Muse is like, my reputation precedes me. I have no ego. Ego is death. But it's always nice to be recognized. But it does beg the question, if you know my work in all its power and beauty, why did you burn it? And so now at this point, Eddie starts reaching out to Carnage in his mind. And he's like, "Carnage, this is bad." And he tells Carnage, "I know you and I aren't seeing eye to eye right now, but I don't think we survive unless we pull together." And Carnage is quiet right now. There's not a peep. And Muse tells him, when you create things, pure things, you must accept that not everyone will understand them. Rejection is part of the artist's life. But when someone burns your work, expresses their philistinery through fire, fire must be answered. And at this point, Muse got the door open and he's coming in. So now Eddie's like, "Carnage?" Because now it's like, uh-oh, we're in danger. But when Muse steps in and he gets to kicking Eddie around, it isn't long before Carnage gives Eddie the ability to attack Muse. Because like we've seen between the two of them, Eddie's in control of the physical attacks, for the most part, outside of the anomaly that we've seen occur a few times throughout this series. But Muse just catches this attack, and he's like, "My, what a lovely shade of red." Just before he notices that attack took everything Eddie had left. So Muse tells him, never fear, I'll make this quick. So he puts the knife to Eddie's throat and he tells him, honestly, I'm anxious to get to the next part. It's my favorite. Always has been. I'm going to make something of you, Eddie Brock, only for Carnage to leap out from Eddie and towards Muse. And keep in mind, from the moment Carnage and Eddie bonded together, this was only done because the two of them were dying in Venom War. And we've known from then, if they were to ever separate, they would both die shortly after. So with Carnage doing this, the clock's ticking. So now Muse is like, the other half. I was wondering if you might make an appearance. Do you have a name? And so Carnage is like, I am Carnage. And just let me say, Muse, I am such an admirer of your work. And Eddie's just like, Carnage, no, because he sees where this is going. And it makes for a moment where Carnage goes on to tell Eddie how he really feels. Because he tells Eddie, you had your chance, big boy. You had the power of the greatest symbiote in the universe all to yourself, and you squandered it. Let that woman poison me, try to kill me. And what's worse, you committed the ultimate sin as far as I'm concerned. You're a loser. But this fine gentleman, he's got winner written all over him. That was the deal, Eddie. Someone beats you, I get them. Sayonara, Brock. Muse and I are going to take things slow, and you'll feel every last second. And now hearing all of this has Muse telling Carnage, you're very kind, but I work alone. Collaboration, it never ends well in my experience. Even if the other artist is brilliant, it's still a dilution of vision. And so, while I'm flattered, and the experience does sound interesting, I must decline. And man, I can only imagine Eddie's back there enjoying this at least just a little bit. But Carnage can't believe that he just got curved. Cause right now Carnage is feeling like, how you gonna say no to me? Do you know how many hosts out there would love to have my symbiosis all over them? And I mean, Carnage, his words aren't those exactly, but it's something of the sort. And I mean, with Muse giving Carnage the hard pass, but also managing to get out of the room and shut the door ever so smoothly, he then finds the remote and he's like, let's see what this does. So he hits the button and flames just start shooting inside the room. And when Muse sees this, he's just like, oh, that's very nice. So he starts to inspect the remote for what other colors it has for him to paint this canvas with. But in the meantime, there's a moment where Carnage is getting ready to snap on Eddie, but Carnage is like, no, let's take a breather. Let's take a minute and consider this situation. And Carnage leads here with an apology because he's like, look, I understand you're upset because I tried to bond with Muse, but I think he's interesting. I just like his whole vibe. Just an attraction, nothing deeper. Because of course now Carnage sounds like somebody who cheated and got caught. And he goes on to tell Eddie, like Eddie said before, they are in a tight spot. So it probably would be best that they bond together like now. But at this point, Muse, he done found another button. And when he pushes it, those sonics kick in. So now they both know it's just a matter of time before Muse chooses another button. And that's where Carnage tells Eddie to think of how it will feel. Because not only does Carnage need a host, but Eddie needs Carnage to heal. So Eddie goes for it and the two of them bond again. But of course, they've got to do the we are Carnage thing. And I can't wait for Venom to hear that. He's going to be like, yo, he copied my whole flow. But now that the two of them are back together, Muse is over here like, well, would you look at that? And now Eddie and Carnage aren't trying to waste no time. So they immediately break the glass, causing multiple shards to either stab or cut Muse. And one of the pieces, this huge chunk of glass, it cuts Muse's hand off. And he's just like, impeccable craftsmanship, only for Eddie to tell him I'm just getting started. But Muse is basically like, nope, as he hits two buttons at the same time, which triggers electricity and fire. And Muse just uses that as an opportunity to pick up his hand and get up out of there. And on the way out, he's like, this has been informative. I can use this. And all you see is this voice from the basement like, not unless you're left-handed, you hack. But as Muse leaves, Carnage tells Eddie, he's not dead. You didn't get him. But still, that was good work, Eddie. I'm impressed. And after that, Carnage finally heals Eddie's injuries. And you can tell Eddie very much appreciates it because it's been a while. And after that, Carnage goes on to tell Eddie about how he's so lucky that Carnage was able to heal him, as Eddie notices the syringe with the serum just laying on the floor across the room. So Eddie goes to pick it up and Carnage is like, wait a minute. And Eddie begins to inject himself with it, but Carnage tells him, Eddie, you know what that woman said. You use that serum and it's over. It won't just be me. You'll never bond with any symbiote. You'll never feel this way again. And that right there is enough to stop Eddie. Though at the same time, it looks like he used just enough to shut Carnage up for now. But this is also a callback to what Eddie told Molina before about him having a bit of an addiction to his abilities as King in Black. And I gotta say, after Carnage has had all these small dosages of this serum, this all might just make him immune to it. And I mean, I guess we'll find out whenever the Green Phoenix rises from the ashes. I mean, if that's still a thing. But then after this, we go into an epilogue that jumps forward 2 weeks later, where we find Carnage still trying to break into that locked place in Eddie's mind, Only this time he eventually does, and when he looks inside he sees a ton of books. And he's like, no more secrets, Eddie, not from me. Where to begin? Where to? As he sees a book with Spider-Man on the cover. So Carnage is like, don't mind if I do. And when Carnage opens this book, he's like, huh? Peter Parker. And he pulls out a ton of pages, with many of them looking like your late 80s, early 90s amazing Spider-Man panels. And it eventually comes to the point where Carnage is like, how about that? And now I don't believe this has to do with Carnage learning Peter Parker's identity, since Carnage bonded with Ben Reilly after the Clone Saga, so I imagine that's something he would already know, unless Carnage forgot because of One More Day or Secret Wars. But then you would think Absolute Carnage would have brought that back. But either way, instead what I'm thinking, and maybe this is wishful thinking, but to me it would make more sense if this was a part of Eddie's mind that we've heard about in the last 2 Venom series, when we were given moments where both Eddie and Venom mentioned how much Peter influenced the both of them to do more good, and even to the point where Eddie would ask himself, what would Parker do? But who knows, maybe I'm forgetting a reset or something, but to me it would just make more sense to pay off all of that investment. Because now with the Venom series picking back up with issue 250, it really just seems like more all new Venom. So who knows what's gonna come of this? You guys let me know what you think down in the comments. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.